Alrighty, thank you very much,
Eric.
Eric. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Sorry about the sound issue. Okay, well, I'm gonna get started here. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Brandon Schwen, and I'm a designer for the WISDOT Southeast Freeways team. Today's topic, as Eric mentioned, is working efficiently in Civil 3D, plan production, and general tips. This kind of sounds like a broad topic, so I'm glad we kind of have a good group here. But having some small tips or tricks that everybody can use, or at least even some people can use, just in the back of your mind while you're working in Civil 3D can always help. Hopefully help you make some tight deadlines and avoid working those 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. mornings, and get some plan sheets out. It's kind of I like to tell everybody who comes to me asking for Civil 3D support that there's always a million ways to produce the same results. You talk to 5 different users, you're going to get 5 different answers. So anything that I show today is kind of, I pooled some of the other designers on the Southeast Freeways team, and along with my experiences myself, this is kind of things that we do. So they may be different or they may fall in line, but it's not by any means this is the only way that you have to do everything. Another thing with this topic is I wanted to show a couple things that people on the design side can do to help efficiency and focus on things directly related to plan sheets, but also the plans production staff, the people who are actually, in a lot of situations there are 2 different teams that are actually working on the sheets, so there's going to be tips for them as well. So it's kind of a few things that encompasses everybody in a typical office setting, I would say, is kind of how we like to do things. If you do have questions that do pop up, please write them down or make a note of them. If I have time at the end, I'll get to them. Otherwise, we're going to turn it over to the power users in the individual regions, and there is going to be one office that stays live for everybody in the that's online, and they can type in their questions to the chat, and that office will try and manage the questions coming in and work with it. So with that, I'm going to get started with my first topic. And my first topic is going to focus on the roadway file, or the pavement file, as we like to call it. Everybody's kind of got their own name for it. What this is it's one file that can be referenced into sheets that basically lays out all of the horizontal geometry of your plan. It's clean. There isn't a whole lot of layer turning on and off. It's basically just the 2D geometry. The benefit for creating just one file that the plan production staff can reference in is that it's easy. I grab one pavement file. It's got all the horizontal geometry. I don't have to turn layers off. I don't have to bring in all the alignments myself. There's none of that. You designers would set it up for the plans production staff. So I'm going to go to an example one that I kind of have open here. Now I am working in Civil 3D 2014. It's basically pretty similar to 12, but some things might be slightly different looking. So this, what I have here is basically just a clean 2D pavement file. Now, the biggest thing that I wanted to show is that this 2D pavement file is all made with offset alignments. If I zoom in, I have curve flange, I have face of curve, I have back of curve, and they're all actually alignments. This isn't the only way to do it, for sure. Polylines are definitely still acceptable. A lot of people like to do that. Put a polyline on the correct layer. It's easy to offset. Alignments take an extra minute or two. You might have to name them and et cetera, and put them on the right style. But the real benefit that we have found to using offset alignments is it's very dynamic. It's very there to design change. So if you set it up correctly, I'm going to take this pavement edge line and I'm going to add a widening. Say I wanted to add turn lane taper, or a longer turn lane taper. So I'm going to add a widening. This isn't about how to add a widening, so if you do have questions, we can go over that later. I'm kind of going to buzz through the widening a little bit, but So I just added a widening to the edge of pavement line alignment, and everything else came with. The curb flange, the face of curb, everything came with it. If I were to do this with polylines, I would have to delete all the polylines, re-offset, and that. This is where we find the offset alignments to be a big advantage, is that if you're early in design and you set it up correctly, there's very little that you have to do for your pavement file to keep it up to date. Now, one thing to note about this pavement file is that all of these offset alignments are actually sourced within this file. They're not anywhere else. They're physically in this one file. The reference line alignments are not in this file, but just the offset alignments, horizontal geometry, that type of stuff in this file. That reduces the synchronization when you go to reference it into another drawing. Everything is sourced here. You have one source. You don't have to make a design change somewhere else and chase it on through. Another thing is that you can data shortcut out of these. You can data shortcut these alignments out of this pavement file to use in your corridor and anywhere else you may need them. But this is the source. You edit it here. It's going to automatically, once you update your corridor, synchronize the references. You'll see the string link taper in the corridor. Once you save this file, it's going to be represented on the sheet files too. So it's one file that kind of controls the updating and keeps everything in line. That's 100% dynamic to change. One thing to note about the data shortcuts is that if I look at my shortcut list for offset alignments, I only have a small group, but in this drawing I have a ton of alignments. Well, there's no reason to data shortcut a face of curb alignment or a back of curb alignment because you don't need them in corridor targeting. You really only have to shortcut and get in your shortcut list what you need to target in your corridor that you can use. Or if you need it in something else, some modeling thing that you may need in alignment, whatever. But that's kind of, some people I've seen that they got a whole big old list of offset alignments in their data shortcut for face of curb, all sorts of stuff. It's unnecessary. It's a little overkill in my opinion, but we're kind of talking about efficiency. Having that shortcut list smaller is definitely a big positive, I guess, per se. I think that's all I wanted to show about the pavement file, is that we utilize this. Now you can have 4 or 5 pavement files if you want, if you got multiple designers working on different parts of the project. That's totally acceptable. Just kind of move on and keep things broken up, but at least it's one file for that part of the project. The second thing that I want to kind of go into is kind of changing gears a little bit is cross sections. And I know that a lot of people spend a lot of time fighting cross sections and trying to make them look good. Well, there's at least one thing that I know that a lot of people struggle with, and that's placing markers in your cross sections, whether that be for reference line, utility, match lines, whatever it may be. There's a few ways that it can be done through a profile grade add on a sample line or what have you that actually really slow you down. If you want to add one, it becomes extremely difficult to actually add that to your profile grade. So I'm going to show a quick way to add markers onto section views that's dynamic, that you can add and remove one at a time, whatever you want. You can add or remove per different section view if you want to, and that's actually with feature line projections. That's what we found is the easiest, and it's completely dynamic. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with a reference line marker for my alignment. I kind of have an urban local road, boulevard divided roadway. I have a reference line down the center. So I'm going to mark that where my reference line is. I'm going to put that on the section views. So the first thing I have a data reference alignment in this drawing. We have to make sure that you have Depending on how your project's set up, you're going to want your profile and your alignment in this drawing. Obviously, your alignment has to be in your cross-section drawing, but sometimes your profile isn't. So grab your profile in here too. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a feature line from this alignment. And what this is going to do is it's going to be dynamically linked to the alignment. I make a change in the alignment, the feature line is going to automatically update. So if I go to feature line, create feature lines from alignment, it's going to ask me to select the alignment, which I'll come in here, select the alignment. I'll get the little wizard. I can name it whatever I so please, because it is a feature line, so there's not exactly a naming convention for feature lines, but I can just do something like that. It's totally up to you. And now it has. I can select whatever profile I want to have this feature line snap to. If the profile changes, the feature line is going to change. So you can pick your proposed alignment. You don't necessarily have to weed points if you don't want to. You can pick whatever style you so please, but there is P, ALI, proposed reference line. So I'm going to choose that one. And I'm going to definitely check the bottom that says create dynamic link to the alignment. You want everything to update dynamically just in case there's design changes. So once I do that, now it may be kind of hard to see, but there's actually a feature line on top of my alignment through the extents of the profile that I have. And that's where it made the feature line. It doesn't continue past the profile, just where that profile is. So now that I have that feature line created, what I can do is I can set up, what I need to do is I need to make a block that represents that reference line marker. So I can go into the block editor, there's a million different ways to get in there, and I'm just going to pick one of the kind of the default cross-section markers that's already in the drawing, that's already in the template file, which is the right-of-way for X sections. So I'm just going to pick one. We'll go into the block editor, and I'm just going to change the text to whatever I want it to be. So I want reference line, and NO is my roadway abbreviation. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to save the block as. You can save it whatever you want. Do OK. We'll close block editor. So that's going to be the marker that's going to show up on my section views. Now, one step I have to do next is make a marker style for that. So if I come into the settings and I go to General, Multi-purpose styles, and marker styles, we can see a whole list of everything. But as I use the right-of-way as to take from in the blocks, I'm going to take it from in the marker style too. So I'm right-click, I'm going to create a copy of that. I'm going to change the name to excess reference line NO. Again, naming convention not highly critical. And I'm going to find the block that I just created to select that as the marker symbol, which is RL, NO, XS. Everything else you can leave the same. And then I'm going to do OK. So I've now just created another style for my XSRL NO marker. The reason that I chose to make my own block is so I can easily share this to another drawing, and I can have it use, if I want to label that reference line in another drawing, I have that block already made. There are built-in user text options that you can use if you're just you really just want to label one thing in that drawing. You can definitely use the user text blocks and the user text style, and you don't have to worry about creating your own blocks and whatnot from there. So the last step is actually, I lied. There's one more step in between. We need to edit the feature line style that I chose. What I'm going to do, I select my feature line, I'm going to edit feature line style. Now you can also create your own for each reference line. I'm just going to quickly edit this one. And I'm going to go to the section tab and choose the marker style that I just created from my reference line, XSRLNO. Once I select that, it's going to, in a section view, it's going to have that style that I just made that's going to reference back to the block that I created. So it's kind of, we're stepping through the process. So I made that. It's not on the section views yet because we haven't projected it. So now we need to project that feature line onto the section views. So if I come up to the Home tab under Profile Views and Section Views, if I hit the drop down, there's Project Objects to Multiple Section Views. If I click that, it's going to kind of walk you through the prompts, select a sample line or a section view. Well, I'm close to the sample line, so I'll grab the sample line. Now this is going to come up with a whole bunch of projection settings. First thing we're going to want to do is change the distance to just 0 out, so it goes exactly where it needs to be. Then we'll come down here. You can project all sorts of types of objects onto section views, but we're only concerned about feature lines right now. So we're going to uncheck everything except for the feature lines. Since I linked that feature line to a profile, I'm going to use the object style, because we edited the style. I'm going to use the object's elevation because it has its own profile data. We already gave it that. It's dynamically linked. So the elevation value is going to vary. Now the label style, we're just going to go to none, because that's a default kind of label thing. We've already set up how we want it labeled with the marker style. We don't need an additional label. So if I do OK, it's going to think for a minute. If I go over to the section views, I now see my marker, and it's on every view. It's right where the reference line is. It's right where the proposed profile is. It's clean. It's fast. You can individually select them in each section view. They're not all tied together. It's pretty quick. And a lot of people do put their reference lines on their section views. Another thing that a lot of people do is, so that's just one way, or not one way, that's one option you can label. Another thing is utilities. I kind of have just a ES utility polyline in here, representing a fiber optic line. So if I want to project that onto my section views, I need to get it into a feature line. So what I can do is I can create, you may already have these as feature lines, but I'm just kind of walking you through the process of feature lines to section view. It's going to be a lot of similarities into what I just did, but there's less work because the blocks and the marker styles are already set up for all the utilities. I'm going to create feature lines from objects, select my polyline, I selected the whole thing, and I'll create this feature line. Now, like I said, the styles are already set up. So if I come up E utility underground fiber optic, that's kind of what the line is. I just kind of match up what I want. I'm not going to assign elevations or anything because it's not necessarily at this point. You could if you wanted to, but it's not necessary. I'm going to do OK. Now if I click it, it is a feature line. Now I just have to go in and take a look at the feature line style and make sure that this crossing marker is set to what I need it to be. It may be a no display, it may be something else, but I want to make sure that it's just like we created the XSRLNO last time. In here we have built-in XS fiber optic. So I'm going to make sure that's selected as the section display object and do OK. And then I'm going to follow the same process to project that feature line onto my section views. I'm going to project objects onto multiple section views, select a sample line, uncheck everything but feature lines, set my distance so it goes where it needs to be. Now, the one thing with existing utilities that we don't have is we don't have a profile. That feature line is sitting at 0. We don't want it to go to 0. So the elevation options, I'm going to grab a surface. I can snap these markers to a surface. So I'm going to grab my existing surface. So it's attached to the existing surface. And then I'm going to do a no label style as well. When I do this, I'm going to get a prompt because I already projected a feature line onto those views. Some objects have already been projected as section views created for the sample line group. What do you want to do? I want to override with new settings. No, I don't want to do that because I don't want my reference line marker to go to my existing surface because I had a different option in there before. So I'm going to keep the old settings for duplicated objects. It's going to take a minute, and now we come over here. We can see my fiber optic is here, where that alignment or that feature line is, and it's snapped on my existing surface. So gives you a quick, nice, easy way, and you can do, basically you can do an unlimited amount, not unlimited, but within reason, that amount of feature lines can be projected on your section views. If you have feature lines, you can always pop them onto the views. So that was kind of a big thing that we ran into that really slowed us down was getting those markers on there, but feature lines are a big help. I think that's why I want to talk about cross sections. So those are a couple of tips that designers more on the design side can use to help the plans production staff or help themselves with cross sections which also go into plan. Now we're going to really change gears and kind of go to what the plan production staff can do to help their efficiency.
Hey, Brandon?
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw in, could you open that project onto multiple sections dialog? I just wanted to point out to people one of the things with this method, which is a really good one, if you take a look at all of those object types that are down below there, they are all objects that can be 3D. So that's kind of one of the critical things in this workflow is if you want to be able to project, even like Brandon showed in that second example, they don't have to have a elevation assigned to them, but they have to be able to accept an elevation. So the critical thing here is if you're working with an alignment object or like a 2D polyline or even a line, you've got to get that converted to a type of object that can be represented in 3D. That's one of the requirements of this method. So just to be aware.
Thanks, Eric, for the little input. So we're going to change gears a little bit and go into the plan production side. So with the plans production stuff, if you have a lot of references, which usually your sheets have, you have tons of references, you have everything on these layout tabs, and there's just a lot for the system to load up. Well, you can do things to help yourself with that load time and the speed with flipping between model space and paper space. A lot of people come to me and say, it's taken forever for me to switch between tabs. So obviously some things you can't change about some of how your drawings are set up, but there's at least a few little things that at least may help you. So the first thing I'm going to go, actually I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to stay in model space. The first thing that we really notice that slows kind of everybody down is that a lot of people, usually you're working on 2 monitors. That's kind of a standard with given this software, is that a lot of people on their second monitor, they'll have the properties dialog box or the layer manager, they'll have inquiry tool, they'll have everything under the sun open and ready for their use on that other monitor. Although that is nice to have over there, sometimes it can really hurt you. And I'll kind of show why. So I opened up the layer manager, and let's see if I can. So a lot of people have this open a lot. They're switching between layers, whatever, what have you. Well, in sheet files, when you have a ton of references, every reference has a ton of layers. If you think of our template file, all the layers that we have, we'll multiply that times the number of references. That's how many layers you have. and Civil 3D can find them all. You have all your layers for every reference, which is definitely an advantage when you start messing with plot styles and all sorts of stuff like that. But if you have the layer manager open, that's a lot of layers for it to have to think about and refresh. So when I have the layer manager open and I go over to one of the sheets that I have already set up in this drawing, if we watch the layer manager, it kind of refreshes, it kind of thinks a little while. I even get the little Windows spin object, and now it flashes everything. If you have the layer manager open and you have a ton of references, that's going to take a while. So this is something that, and it actually even flipped to a different drawing from the background. This is something that you can really control by closing the layer manager. So I'm going to jump back over to my plan detail. So it did go to the sheet. Remember how long it took for me to get there? I have the layer manager closed. I can pop over to model. And I'm working in a vacuum here, really. I have all my files on my C drive. I'm not on the network. It's not really realistic. And we can still notice the difference between switching over. So a lot of people have that layer manager open. I just pop back to that tab real fast. So think about what you have open, layer manager, other stuff. If you're working on sheets with a lot of references, a lot of layers, it can really save you time by closing the layer manager, jumping back over, and then reopening it. If you have to. Sometimes you don't even need to. So a lot of people have the layer manager open to keep switching between layers and stuff. Well, you can also use the layer filters that are already set up. You can make your own layer filters, but layer filters definitely do have some power. So say I was, I'm going to show you the example of the pencil. Sorry. Say I was working on, I don't have typical sections up, but they're a good example. Say I was working on typical sections. There's a layer filter for typical sections. Got all my existing, proposed, anything with typical sections. If I was working on that and I was switching layers a lot, if I turn that layer filter on, I close the layer manager, and I come up to the drop down of all your layers, it recognizes that layer filter that you just turned on. You can use the layer filter without having the layer manager open. So it would be an easy way to flip between to make your active layer, proposed, miscellaneous, existing, whatever you want. You could set up layer filters for your use and filter out the layers that you use the most, and then you really don't have to open that very often unless you're messing with plot styles and all sorts of stuff like that. So having items open a lot can slow you down, and it's something that you can manage as a user, and that's not necessarily system generated. Kind of this along the same lines is the properties dialog. A lot of people have their properties window always open, or they turn on the quick properties. Well, quick properties is great, and it pops up somewhat fast, but there's the delay there. Same with the properties window. Anytime you select an object, if you have that properties window always open, it's going to have to load the properties. You're telling it that you want it to load that properties with that window open. If you keep them closed, open them only when need be, toggle on and off your quick properties, you can really see a benefit. You can be more efficient selecting objects and working with them. This is just an alignment. I can select it really fast. I can do whatever I want to. But if I have the quick properties, you can notice that lag time. And I realize that everybody's hardware is different, and they may not notice some of these things, but if you're working on an older PC, maybe less RAM, lower video card, some of these things really do come into play. And there's something, as users, you can manage. So our kind of strategy is, if you need it, keep it open. If you don't need it, close it. It's kind of straightforward and can really help out. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about, I have a few minutes here left in the presentation, and Eric already talked about it during his methods kind of update, is the use of pallets and the new WIS managed pallets with 2014. If I already have my pallet open, which is over here. It's probably gonna automatically open to your kind of sub-assemblies palette that you'll see. I was on the science palette, but oh boy. I need to give it a minute.
Do you notice the same delay if you have your
I have not noticed too terrible of a delay with that one. For everybody who didn't hear that, the question was, have you noticed a delay with having the prospector open or not? I found that it doesn't necessarily matter, but other users may have found out something different depending on what their drawings are like, what they have. If you have the master view or the active view open, it could make a difference. I just keep it closed on this laptop because I run out of room. On my normal desktop, I generally have it open all the time because I use a lot of information over there. It's looking like I shouldn't have done what I did, which is unfortunate during this presentation. So we're going to give it a couple seconds. One thing to note about these, the new WIS managed palette is sometimes it does take a while. If you're going, I'll show you where everything is, but it sometimes does take a while to load. All the signs are now on the pallets, the sign blocks, so it does sometimes take a little while to load. But if you do it once, then you can kind of jump back and forth. So if I open my pallets, if I right-click on the side, I'm not going to go to the sub-assemblies again. Usually that's probably your default. But there's a new area called New Palette Group, the WIS.manage palette group. And then within this, there's Topog, right-of-way, sheets, and signs. All of these contain either blocks, line types, or whatever that these areas use quite efficient or more often. Basically, what they did is they put all the blocks and everything on this little palette, and you can just click them and insert them into your drawing. So I'm gonna go to this. Yeah, I'm gonna go to science. I'm going to jump over to the WIS.signs. Now it is going to take a little bit. Hopefully it's not too bad. I'm going to try and talk while it's loading. But pretty much this palette group is kind of organized the same way that we're used to seeing the design center. All the signs are organized by type. You're used to seeing like the WZ for work zone, and then the M signs. All of that. I'm not really a signing person, but they're all over there. And instead of having to insert blocks to the design center, you can use these palettes to insert them into your drawing. And all the sign blocks have been updated, so they do come in appropriately sized. I know a lot of people had issues there. And there are new visibility states with the signs that I kind of wanted to show if it'll cooperate. I do have a lot of things running, so like the Bridget software, and I'm actually recording this session, so there's a lot being used on this PC right now that's kind of bogging it down a little bit, and I think it's an older PC, so it's a little bit unfortunate. Yes, Eric.
I'll help you out here for some talk time.
Perfect.
This is
It looks like Lisa wants to talk too.
Oh, okay. Oh, Lisa can talk.
So I was gonna, unless Eric, you were gonna explain this, but I was gonna explain about the slow pallets. This is a known problem for Autodesk, and unfortunately, the signs are the biggest culprits right now in our new pallets. So it's going to take a while for Brennan to be able to show you one of these signs, because it's going to have to. We don't have any relatively small sign pallets, unfortunately. We did divide the pallets up, however, into the 4 groups that he showed you. The sign pallets, as I said, are the biggest culprits. The sheets, the right-of-way, the topog load much faster. So once you touch on each one of the tabs in a group, then you'll be able to switch back and forth between each of the tabs very quickly. They just need to load up one time. However, if you switch between groups, you'll need to redo the loads for each of the tabs. So keep that in mind, that unless you're actually working with the signs, I would avoid them altogether. But he's going to show you some of the cool things that you can do with the signs, but you'll have to be patient with their load time until we figure out, or Autodesk figures out, what's the best way to speed that up for you. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
Thank you, Lisa. It looks like I got the one pallet to load. I apologize for this. I did have them all opened up and ready to go, but when it kind of lacked up on me there, then I obviously didn't have them opened up because I had to restart C3D. So I apologize for that. I wasn't experienced doing that, but we'll kind of get rolling. Like I was saying, you can see all the signs organized by group. We got the D, J, M, O. Our signs are split up into 2 different tabs because there are so many of them that is basically R1 to R3 is on one tab, and then 4 to 6. Actually, they're on a lot of tabs. Ours are on 4 tabs. Then the W and the WZ. So kind of the same grouping that was there in the design center in the block libraries that you're kind of used to seeing from 2012. Now they're kind of all organized on pallets. You can still go in the design center, find your block libraries, and insert them from there if you like that better. But pallets are easy because you can just click and drop in. So I'm just going to pick one sign here. All I have to do is click on it. It's going to think, and then I just have to insert it into my drawing. Came in appropriately sized. I'm not on the layout tab, but that's okay. Now, as I was saying before, the really cool thing about these new sign blocks are the visibility states. If I select a block, we now see this kind of upside down triangle, blue triangle on the side, and these are actually all the visibility states that are with this block. The default is install, which shows as a proposed kind of plot style, proposed showing on your screen and in your drawing. If I go to install no size, it now suppresses the size text from the bottom of the sign, and you don't have to explode the block just to get rid of that text. That's really nice. Now remove signs. The first one is just remove for the visibility state. You'll have a remove text on the bottom, and this is put on an existing layer. So that layer plots as existing. So this remove could be an existing sign or whatever, what have you, but it basically puts it on an existing layer, which is extremely helpful. And then the last one is remove with the no text. So the remove text is suppressed. One thing to note about visibility states, if you're working with like an interstate sign or a highway sign where you have to edit the attributes of the block, so I can still do that here. If I want to edit the size, it's just a matter of double clicking on the block and I get all the attributes that I want to add. I can change the size, whatever. But if you're working with like a roadway sign, highway number sign, you have to enter the number, obviously, otherwise it's zeros, and that's probably not what you want to see. But if you put that in, it's a per visibility state. So if you insert the block, you put in IH94, and then you wanted to change the visibility state to remove, the 94 would go away and you'd have to reinsert it again. So you may want to set the visibility to say first, and then edit the attributes of the block. Not that it's too hard to do it again, but nobody likes doing things twice if you don't have to. So that's kind of the new blocks. I'm running up against my time, so that's kind of all I have and all I wanted to show you today. So hopefully some tips and tricks can be used a little bit that I've shown. And if you do have questions, I'm going to turn it over to all the power users at all the regions. And if they feel comfortable answering questions, they can mute their audio. But I am going to turn it over to the lacrosse office for live and wish them luck. So thanks everybody again for tuning into my presentation. And here's the lacrosse office.